Hey guys, it's Shannon from iHeartRadio Canada, joined by Tegan and Sara. Thank you guys so much for joining. I appreciate it.
Yay, thanks for having us.
No problem. Okay, first of all, I just want to thank you guys just for like being you and for being good role models, because you guys were very apparent in my coming out experience and you guys were making music at the time. So it was so nice to have you guys like as role models through my coming out experience. So thank you for that.
Oh, that's great. I mean, we feel like we're sort of like unknowingly and like walking the path with a lot of people in their coming out and their experiences and their discoveries, and that's wonderful. I mean, for us, there were people who were part of that process when we were coming out as young people. So it's sort of a nice full circle moment to like now realize you're the old one who's watching the younger people come out.
Yeah, exactly. Full circle for sure. Okay, let's skip the small talk. Let's get right into the nitty gritty, the tough stuff. Okay, you two are Canadian, but I know you have a lot of American connections and have lived in the States too, right? So are you just like, how is it to like not be devastated every single day by everything that's going on in the States?
Yeah, we are devastated every single day by what's going on in the States. I mean, to be honest, I think Sara and I, we've had obviously the privilege since 1998 of traveling around the world. And so I think we think globally, and we've always considered ourselves, very proud to be Canadian, but consider ourselves international artists, and have looked at one of the big perks and privileges of our job is that we get to travel all around the world. And, I can remember the first time we went to Asia, like being in, I think it was specifically Taipei, I had this like sort of moment, but being like, wow, the world is a huge place with bazillions of people, and not everyone is thinking about America or Canada or about this thing. And I think right now, the thing I'm struggling with most is trying not to just fixate on what's happening in America, because I think there are really horrifying and really big things happening all over the world. When we think about climate change or 1 million people dead from COVID, there are lots of big things happening. But I think it's undeniable that everything that happens in America does influence outside, America. And so it's horrifying. Sara and I are both partnered with Americans. We lived in the US the last 10 years. We've spent the last 21 years traveling everywhere. We've been to every state except for Alaska. No offense, Alaska. It's just, you're very far, and it's just been hard to get there. So for us, it's impacting us deeply. America is a second home to us. I think Americans deserve better than what's happening right now. And I am sort of just fearful about what's going to come in the next few weeks, but also hopeful that a change is going to happen. So
I totally, it's scary times for sure. And I know, like you said, you two are used to like traveling all over the world and being on the road so much. How does it feel for you guys to now just be forced to slow down? And you guys are living in the same city for the first time in a while?
Yeah, we've actually, it's been quite a few years now. We were both living in LA part-time together, although LA is so gigantic that there were times where I was like, where does Tegan live? Oh yeah, she lives here, but we wouldn't see each other. But we are both
I avoided Sara. What she's saying is I avoided her. So
she seriously, she lived so far away. It was like a different city. No, we both sort of have been reconnecting with Vancouver in full-time mode for almost 2 years now. So this pandemic sort of there's a strange sort of serendipitous nature to where we find ourselves in our lives. We had already started to pivot away from wanting to tour as much. We wanted to work in different mediums. We wrote a book last year. We've been looking at projects that would require us to tour less and stay home more, or post up in other places and work collaboratively with other kinds of artists and people, and then also just wanting to spend more time in Canada, wanting to spend more time with family and friends after 2 decades of being in the United States. So this has all sort of worked out in a strange pandemic perk kind of way, where we had already really put down some roots again in Vancouver, and we've mostly been able to keep ourselves really creatively busy, and hopefully, touring won't be impossible for too long. I mean, we're sort of counting on probably another year that we won't be able to go out and do the kinds of shows that we want to do. So we're just trying to be productive and keep ourselves healthy and happy and connecting in meaningful, sustainable ways with our audience as much as we can.
Yeah, and you guys have been doing such a good job of that with like your lives and coming out with this remix album. Also the videos for it, Tegan, sick editing. So
thank you for seeing me.
Yeah. What made you guys decide to want to come out with a remix version of this album?
We're so lucky because we have a great relationship with our label. We've been with Warner for a long time now, and they're great at letting us sort of expand the theatrical and physical products around a release. And we put out a record last year called Hey, I'm Just Like You. Obviously, because of the pandemic, our touring was cut short. And one of the ways that we kind of came up with to continue promoting the record and continue sharing those songs that are so important to us was to do a remix record. So we were really thrilled. All the artists who did the remixes are just amazing, and we're thrilled by the response to the songs. And then, like I said, Warner have been amazing about letting us kind of make other assets to go with it. So we were like, it's not good enough to just have a remix record. We need videos, and the budget for that wasn't very big, but I offered to try to edit together some stuff. So we found some footage of us from the early 2000s that no one had ever seen. So I put a video together with that, and then had Sara and I both tape our lives for like 2 months and then cut together that. But the other artists, Commortal, amazing artists from Vancouver, they are just incredible. I highly recommend them to everybody. Put together 2 more videos for us. And then a friend of ours, Steven from LA, who's just an amazing visual artist, also put together a video. So I feel so lucky because I know so many artists right now that are just like sitting on a release or we're just about to put a record out and are feeling really sad that they aren't able to promote it the way that they normally would. I feel lucky because Sara and I, we often put out videos. So I feel like our audience was ready for it. And anyway, it was a great thing to be able to do in the middle of a pandemic. It made me feel happy anyway. I hope it brought joy, but
It brought me joy, so there's one at least.
Okay, good.
Okay, so I have the hard copy of your book, but I'm so glad that I ended up listening to the Audible version of your book because of the song recordings that are in there. I didn't go to school today, stuck in my head for like weeks after. What I can't believe that, first of all, you guys have so much recordings of you guys first starting out. That's got to be so cool to be able to look back on that. But just looking back on yourselves in general and writing this book, do you feel like you learned a lot about yourselves and each other just by diving back into that time in your life?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting that you bring up, the archival materials that we used to write our memoir. We had a lot of VHS tapes and mini DVD tapes, and we had so many audio recordings of, just us sitting in our bedrooms talking and trying out songs and ideas. But it's interesting because as we were writing the book, it really hit me that we were that generation that had access to technology. They were clunky and sometimes difficult to use technologies, but we were a generation that became interested in filming and documenting ourselves. And then we were kind of the first generation to take on the internet and social media. And I think in some ways we are the poison in the well. I mean, we grew up having our parents film us constantly and take so many photos and whatever. And so we really adapted quite quickly to the technologies that became so integrated and central to like the way we listen to music and experience the internet now. So it was so interesting because I sort of don't think of myself as being a part of that sort of like internet generation, but we were already really aware of the power of filming something and then showing it to people or to watch it back with people. And I think one of the early instincts that we write about in the book, in the memoir, is almost as soon as we have written our first song, we are recording it. It was an innate understanding that it wasn't just good enough to have the song and then like take the guitar and play it for people. It was like, no, we have to capture it and then we have to play it for people. And that was kind of interesting to go back and sort of realize that was something that we had been doing, for most of our lives already.
Yeah, there's a part of the book that just because you say that sticks out where I think you guys were talking about like if a song was good enough for you guys to record. So it is so cool to see that you guys were doing exactly that, like just like figuring it out and then being like, okay, now we have to record it.
Yeah, and we probably wouldn't have described it this way even until we maybe started writing this memoir, which is 20 something years later. But I think there was already an instinct in us to produce ourselves, to really sort of want the observational distance. It was like I could listen to Tegan play a song in real life, but there was information or there was something about hearing it like on an audio recording in my headphones alone in my bedroom that I could like listen to the song and really hear it. And that was probably also just the significant part of our teenage lives was listening to music through headphones. So I think there was just like part of that as well. But I think there was this kind of confidence, like I can listen to a song and I can, I can instruct Tegan how to play it better, or I could say to Tegan, I have this idea or whatever. And that was sort of also really innate in us as young people.
Yeah, and not even just learning how to play these instruments and learning these songs, but it seems like right away you guys were on like creating songs and writing songs, which is
Oh yeah. And thought we were good. Tegan tells this funny story about how in her journal, like we've written one song and she's already writing in her journal, like, oh, we're going to be huge. Like this is, we just had so much confidence.
That's
So
like
much
the
confidence.
motivation that you need, right? In order to like,
Yeah.
it obviously worked.
It was the
I
secret.
think so.
Yeah.
And now it's been a few decades later. You guys turned 40 years old. Congratulations. I know it's been a couple of weeks, but a huge milestone. How did it feel for you guys? Were you able to celebrate despite the pandemic?
Yeah, in a way, I feel like it was the perfect way to turn 40 is during a pandemic, because I feel like there's such like, oh man, 40. So it felt perfect to be able to say, well, we're celebrating during a pandemic. But I actually feel like all things considered, it ended up being a great day. I think if it hadn't been a pandemic, we probably would have wanted to throw some huge party and make a big to-do out of it. And it was actually nice to make it a much smaller, more intimate affair. We were able to escape the city and go out to Naramata, where there's wine country here in British Columbia, and we met a few high school friends. And my mom came up, and it was really nice. Actually, it was a really low key day, but a good reminder of how lucky we are. And I think Sara and I, we have a different relationship to age than some people. I feel like when we turned 30, there was like a lot of people asking like, oh, you're 30 now, or you feel like your career's over, you're going to get married and have kids. And there's just like these weird stereotypes that come with age that I think Sara and I that it rolls right off us. I don't think we think about it. So I'm happy to be 40. I think it's very exciting. I'll tell you, this morning when I woke up, my lower back, I was like, I'm 40, because I don't know why, it feels broken. I'm not sure what's wrong with it.
That was me yesterday. I was like, there's something severely wrong with me, but it's okay, Tegan, you bounce back, because I feel better today.
Yeah, no, I mean, I stretched it out, feeling great.
There you go. That's what you got to do. That's so sweet. I want to go back to the book for a second, because I wanted to ask this. I noticed a lot in my coming out experience, and like looking back on my coming out in my teenage years, I realized there was so much more internalized homophobia than I thought. Did you guys find that looking back?
Yeah. And it's interesting because the idea of internalized homophobia is something that I think is now more talked about. Like we sort of have more of an understanding about it in our own community. When I was in my 20s, I remember being I don't know if the word is instructed or called out on. Like I remember my first girlfriend when I moved to Montreal, just I'm making comments and her being like, you are very homophobic. Like you need to deal with your internalized homophobia. And I just remember being like, what are those words? What do you mean? So it was really actually helpful to me to understand that a lot of my, my judgments of other people were actually part of my own, like the way that I was judging myself, and some of my own self-loathing and discomfort around my sexuality, my body, my identity. I was sort of projecting those things on other people, but it was really me who had to get right with myself. Like I had to like figure me out. And when I look back at, adolescence in particular, the teenagers are sponges. We are picking up stuff everywhere. And if society is homophobic, if society is sort of like making us feel bad about ourselves, of course we're going to internalize that, and then we're going to use that against our own selves. So I think talking about it is actually one of the easiest ways to sort of reconcile it or exercise it out of yourself. But just for the record, I'll think things in my head, and I'll just be like, wow, that's a homophobic thing. Like I'm still weirdly homophobic sometimes about myself. Like, and some of it's actually misogyny probably too. Like, I tell myself, oh, I shouldn't look this way, or I shouldn't feel this way. And then I have to sort of like deprogram. It's like a little version of me inside my head is like, unplug that, stop thinking those things. But yeah, I think it's wonderful that as a community that we're talking about it, because it's probably the biggest impediment to loving ourselves.
Yeah, totally. Tegan, do you feel the same way?
Yeah, I think I suffered less inner homophobia than Sara did. So, when we were writing the book, reading a lot of her experiences about how she felt and like her shame and all that, that was really, was really moving and meaningful to me. And it's not totally foreign to me, but I definitely compartmentalized my homosexuality in a really different way as a young person. Like for me, I think there was much more shame around just talking about sex. So I don't remember as a teenager being fearful about coming out so much as I just didn't really want to have to talk about sex to anyone. And sex and sexuality were so linked for me. I think I've just always been a bit of a prude and a little bit, maybe slightly more uncomfortable talking about really private things. But, as an adult, I don't feel like I've experienced homophobia in the same way internally or externally. I feel like I've been very lucky. I definitely notice as I get older, less thinking about, like, as Sara was just starting to explore, like, we had short hair for the longest time, and then we started growing our hair out. There was often critiques from our own community being like, well, why are you trying to look so feminine? And that to me is very fascinating, and obviously a much larger topic and probably not appropriate for this interview because we don't have the time, but how much we link sexuality and gender. And there is still a lot of work there to unravel, like why there are plenty of lesbians, queer people, trans people, everyone looks different, bisexual people, everybody is different. We all just like, there is no like, if you are this, you look this way. It's so strange to me, just the way that straight people look a variety of ways. So I think for me, that's probably some of the work I'm still doing is, I'll have days where I'll put an outfit on and my girlfriend will be like, you look so good. And I'm like, I feel so like gay. and then she'll be like, you are gay. But, I think I still like, I'm still unraveling that part, but that seems to be more linked to gender than anything. But, it's good that we're having all these conversations. I love that the mainstream is starting to embrace these conversations and looking at it. We all know gender and sexuality are both sort of spectrums, and everybody should just do what they want. Everybody should dress the way they want, should have the hair they want, they should date who they want. We all know that. Well, sensible people know that, and we just kind of have to unravel the rest.
Totally. And I feel like people do know that, but it needs to be such a reminder because we're still not fully there, right?
Yeah. It's funny. We had an interesting interaction. One of our amazing, wonderful makeup artists that we work with. She has a daughter who's a teenager, and when the makeup artist we work with, when she cut her hair short, the daughter had like a total meltdown about it and was like, "You look like a guy." All these things. And I thought, well, initially we thought it was a funny story, but then I sat with it and thought, well, there's still a lot of work to be done. Like if young people who I think of as being so progressive and open-minded, if they're still linking those things, a short haircut means this or a long haircut means that, there's still work to be done. But, we're talking about it, and that's what's important.
Yeah. And the point you made about like people even within the community can like critique. And I feel like we are so quick to label, especially based on looks and things like that. So I do think that is something that we need to.
We're tough on each other. I think sometimes the community can be really tough. I know for Sara and I, through the years, there was often for us, the harshest critics and the people who were hardest on us were people from our own community. And I get that. We're up on a pedestal. We often are the gay band that represents everyone. Clearly, we do not represent everybody. Clearly, that's not what we want, but that's how it works. There were so few queer voices, especially queer female voices, that we often got held up as like, if you're gay, this is your band. That's Tegan and Sara. That's your band. And it's like, that doesn't make any sense. You don't necessarily like our music just because you're gay, but that's the next memoir.
Yeah, for sure. Next time we chat too, we'll dive all right into that.
Yeah. Totally.
Awesome. Tegan and Sara, thank you so much for taking the time. I really appreciate it. It's been so great to be able to talk to you both.
So nice to talk to you.
Cool.
Yeah.
Guys.
Take care.
Bye.